going to be talking a little bit about graphing lines and how exactly we graph a line that might look like this. So this is called point or slope-intercept form, pardon me, slope-intercept form, and that's because we have two items in our equation. We already know what y's and x's mean, but what does this m and b stand for? So m stands for slope, and b is your y-intercept. So B is where it crosses that y axis, and M is your slope. That tells you how steep it is. So one thing I wanted to show you is we've talked about slope, but we haven't really dove into what exactly slope really means. So with slope, you have, when you're graphing, you could have a line that's steep like this. You could have a line that's a little straighter. You could have a line that's positive, a line that goes this way. You can have one that goes straight across, vertical. All of these lines that I've just drawn crazy here all have different slopes. So what I wanted to introduce is, how do you tell whether the slope is positive, negative, undefined, or zero? So first we have our slope man. This is an easy way to remember what all of those mean. So we have a slope that goes up from left to right. That's going to be a positive slope. If we have a slope that goes down from left to right, it's negative. The way I like to remember this is, if you think about like a graph, something that might look like this. And if the company is gaining money over time, it goes up on a graph, right? So if the line was going up from left to right, that's like we're gaining money. That's positive, right? So if the opposite were true and a company was losing money over time, we'd see something like this, going down from left to right. That would be negative, like we're losing money. So that's how I like to think about positive and negative slope, just because it's easy to think about like gaining or losing money. And then we also have a slope as if we were to go straight across. That has a slope of 0. If we have a horizontal line, that's a slope of 0. Another easy way of remembering it is that if we have the sun coming up over the horizon, it looks like a big 0. So if this is a sun, it looks like a 0. So if you can draw a sun coming up over the horizon, that's a slope of 0. And then this last one, straight up and down vertically, that's going to give you an undefined slope. Why we have an undefined slope? That's just straight up and down. An easy way of remembering this is, it's kind of hard to imagine how high up we could go. The sky is unimaginable. It's undefined. So if we have something that's vertical, we just don't know. It's undefined. And so that's why there's that U there. All right, so now that we've talked a little bit about slope, let's go back to our point slope form. So in each of these equations here, we have the m and the b replaced by a number. In every equation, we'll have a y and an x, or a y or an x, and that kind of determines where we are on the graphing plane. So if we look at this, we need to identify what our m and our b are. So here's our m, here's our b. So I can do that in each of these. I can kind of just lay out where my m and my b are. So my m, again, looking at what's in the m position. So if the m is right here, we need to look at what's right there in that equation. So m is 2. I also like to write, if it's a whole number, we write it over 1. And you'll see why when we go into graphing slopes and graphing these lines, we need them as a fraction. Slope needs to be a fraction in order for us to graph it properly. So I'm going to write it as a fraction just to make it easier for us in the future. So then for b, we need to look at what's in the b position. In this case, it is 1. So we have a slope of 2 over 1 and a y-intercept of 1, our m and our b. In this next one, y equals 1/4 x minus 1. So we have 1/4 in the M position, our slope, and -1 as our y-intercept in our B position. Now this one right here, it's kind of interesting. There's not a number in front of the x, but we see a negative. Anytime there's not a number in front of that, remember, we can put an invisible 1. So our m is -1. And remember, if it's a whole number, we put it over 1. And then our b is going to be 2. So go ahead and look at these examples. All right, so let's look at some of these questions. In this, you should have started out first by identifying where your m's were, and then your b's. And I'm going to leave that middle question for a little bit just because I want to explain it a little better. All right, so in this one, 4/3 is going to be your m because it is in that m position, and b is going to be -4. Now in this one, we only have y equals 4. There is nothing in front of the x, there's just the number by itself. Whenever we have a number by itself, that's going to be our b. So our b is going to be 4. But there is no m in this one. Now if we look at this last one, we have m equals -3 and b equals -3. Alrighty.